To apply for the PMP certification, you need to satisfy PMP Credential Eligibility Requirements. To know if you are eligible to apply for the PMP credential or not, log on to pmi.org and go to the certification tab. You can see the types of certification. Click it, where you can see the list of certifications offered by PMI. Select Project Management Professional, where you can see a snapshot of the requirement you need to fulfill to apply for the PMP certification. My request is, instead of going through this one, to have a comprehensive look at the whole requirement and the detailed step-by-step process one would go through, go to PMP Handbook. Now, PMP Handbook is very comprehensive. As you can see, it's about 59 pages. You don't really have to go through all of them, but some of the pages are very critical for you to review prior to applying for the PMP Credential Examination, right? So I'm going to go to a specific page on this handbook which talks about the eligibility requirement. So basically, to apply for the PMP credential, they are looking at your educational background, and they are looking at your project management experience as well as project management education. Now, the amount of experience you need to have in managing project depends on your basic academic qualification. For example, if you have a bachelor's degree, you need to have only 3 years of experience in managing projects. While if you don't have a bachelor's degree, if you have some secondary degree or anything less than the bachelor's degree, then you need to have 5 years of experience in managing project. I'll get back to what do we mean by managing project in a short time. Before that, so very briefly, if you have a bachelor's degree, you need to have 3 years of experience in managing projects. If you have a high school degree or secondary degree, you need to have the 5 years experience of managing project. In addition to that, you must complete 35 contact hour of formal education in project management. The online training program what we offer will satisfy this requirement. In fact, our training program is approved by Project Management Institute towards this 35 contact hour. It's already pre-approved. All right, so very quickly, what do we mean by leading and directing the project or managing the project? So basically what they say is, you can work in a project at any level. For example, you don't need to be necessarily a project manager to apply for the PMP credential. You could have any job role in a project. You could be, for example, a team leader or a project engineer or a site engineer or let's say quantity surveyor or a project manager. Your job title could be anything in your project, as long as you are leading and directing some part of your project. For example, let's say cost control. Okay, if you're a cost controller, you would be leading and directing the project with specific respect to managing cost on your project. So you don't really need to have the sort of the top managerial position in your project. You could be you could have any job title in your project, as long as you are involved in a project in the 5 process group. Now, if you have gone through the PMP exam preparation training or any sort of recent project management training program, you would know that there are 5 process groups in a project. We have initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So if you have some experience across these 5 process group, then you can be eligible to apply for the PMP credential exam. However, you don't need to have the experience in each of the 5 process group in a single project. For example, of the 3 years project experience you have, you would have worked in 2 or 3 projects. In some projects you would have had experience in planning and executing. In some project you would have had some experience in initiating and closing. So your overall 3 years project experience, in case if you have a bachelor's degree, should have at least some experience across the 5 process group. And it doesn't matter how many hours it is, because basically you need to break down your 3 years experience or 36-month experience into hours. So basically you need to sort of do some calculation to show how would you now how many hours you spend on each of the project across each of the process groups. All right, so let me demonstrate how do we do the calculation of converting your 3 years experience into 4,500 work hours. So what we basically do is, let's assume you worked on a project. Let's call it project A for an year, right? So it's 1 year in terms of duration. Okay, so what we do is we just make some rough calculation. Let's suppose you have a 5 day work week. That means you roughly work about 20 days a month. That's about 240 days a year, right? So you're going to work for 240 days a year. And let's suppose for example, let's say you work about roughly about 6 hours a day on your project. So if I do a simple math here, 240 days times 6 hours a day should give you roughly about 1,440 hours, right? So this is just for one project. So what happens is, when you keep adding your project A, B, or C, for example, the total hours should be equal to 4,500 hours. All right, then what we should do is we should sort of roughly break down the total hours you spent on this project across the 5 process group. Now, for example, this could be, let's say, about 120. This could be roughly about, let's say, 600. This could be about 240. Let's say this could be about 320. Let's say this could be about 200. Okay. Now, just sum it up. Okay, uh, you see it's roughly closer to this value. That's enough. You don't have to, like, exactly match it, because normally, even my students used to ask me, how is it possible for me to calculate the exact number of hours I spent on planning or executing. See, PMI basically wants you to have experience across these 5 process group. You don't have to be accurate. Nobody's going to take a timesheet and start documenting how many hours you spent on each of these process group. It's just your rough approximation. And also it also depends on your job profile. Some of the job profile requires a lot of time to be spent on planning. For example, if you are a planning manager or a scheduler, you should be spending much time in here. For example, if you're a cost controller, you could be spending much time in monitoring and controlling. So what PMI basically says is, for a particular project, you may not have any experience in closing. That's fine, but when you add the other projects like project B and C, you need to make sure that at any one of the project you do have some experience in closing. So it's basically the total number of hours you should be spent on project should be 4,500. Okay, which you need to distribute across the project, and the total amount of time you should have spent on project should be 36 months. All right, so that's what they're trying to say here. You need to have 3 years of experience. In other words, 36 months of experience in project, which should be sort of equivalent to 4,500 hours. All right, and the other thing which they are saying here is it should be unique and non-overlapping. So what they're trying to say is this. Okay, let me scroll down. All right, so this is pretty visual and easy to understand. So if you look at this particular project one, you started on January and finished on April. There are cases, obviously, some of the project team members will work on more than one project at a time. So for example, in this case, a particular team member is working on project 1 and project 2 parallelly during February to April. So on this case, what will happen is whatever overlapping period here, we can take only one project, which means we will take the experience from January to April for project 1, and for project 2 your experience would start from April onwards. So any overlapping, we should not count the amount of time you spent on this. So that's what we mean by overlapping projects. So we should have unique 36 months of experience. It should not, for example, if you work on this project about 4 months, and if you work on this project about 5 months, it doesn't mean you have 9 months of experience, which is pretty obvious. You are still in the month of June only. So the total number of month expended is only 6 months. You cannot show 9 months of project experience, right? That's pretty obvious, but PMI makes it very clear to you. All right, so basically that's all you need. You need to have the project management experience, and you should have the 35 contact hour of formal education in project management, which is what we will provide in our online training program. All right, and I'm sure you will have plenty of question on what I just explained. Please go to our website pmexamstudy.com, where we have a FAQ section where almost all your questions will be answered.